for MLA and V customers that currently have Border Manager under maintenance. About that a little bit more. And it's also, there are variations of Nemesis that are sold directly by SuperLumin that are slightly different than the official replacement for the Border Manager product, and we'll have some reference to some of those products as well. I understand I have 45 minutes to cover a couple hours worth of material, so I am going to speak quickly, and I'm able to take questions. I've got one of my counterparts, one of the developers, Mark Ackerman, is also on the chat. So if you have questions, please do type them up, and we've got someone paying attention to answer those as we go. This is the agenda I will try to get through as quickly as possible. Who we are, what the heck is a Nemesis, beyond Border Manager, a special feature called Social Media Cache. We'll get under the covers and look at the mechanics, what the heck is going on underneath, what we're running on, how big can it get, how fast can it go. We are in the final stages of preparing a release version 2.2, which is scheduled for end of May, early June. So I've added a slide to give you the highlights on what to expect with that version. Questions, doesn't appear that we've got interactive audio. We do have the interactive chat with Mark standing by to answer those at any time. And Q, do we open this up audio-wise at the end for Q&A?
Generally, because of the number of attendees, we generally don't. We just have the attendees put those through on the chat or the Q&A, and then we can talk to them, but we wouldn't have people come through the audio.
Okay, very good. We'll deal with it. So as questions come in, Mark is there while I've got my screen monopolized with slideshow, and we'll then talk to whatever else is there. I'd like to start this out. Oh, come on. With one of those stupid geek tricks. Happen to have been a Novell SE for a long time, so I'm well practiced at these stupid geek tricks. Installation of SuperLumin. Just to highlight how easy this thing is, I've got VMware Workstation set up on my machine, and I've configured an appropriate VM to run Nemesis. The only thing you need to do to install the software is boot from, in this case, the ISO, or a CD that you burn from that ISO. Select the boot device. There is one place where you can prevent now the machine that you're installing this on from being completely overwritten, and that is that screen. Some of you might have experience with iChain, which wasn't nearly as forgiving. If you happen to boot the wrong machine from that scene, it was good night. So we do make you select and press the install key. What's going to happen in the background while I get back to the slides is a full AutoYast-driven installation of the clients, and we'll come on back at the end and see exactly what happened. So also in the Stupid Geek Tricks, we are across here. We have hopefully appeased the demo gods, and this will. So, who is SuperLumin Networks? We are a division of StrataCache, which is a company that's been around since about 1999. The company SuperLumin is actually based in Salt Lake City, founded in 2007, with several brainiacs that have spent a lot of time building proxy cache systems, including Border Manager, iChain, ICS, Valera, and I've also done work for Cisco and Arroyo. Mark, who's answering the questions on the chat, would fall into that category as one of our resident brainiacs. They bring 150 years combined experience in proxy design and engineering to this. So this is not some set of beginners that are venturing into the proxy cache space. It's a been there, done that, learn from past experience, learn from past mistakes, and got to start over. So that was a very, very good thing. What is Nemesis, and what the heck did that name come from? Where? The only explanation I have for the name is that our chief executive, a fellow named Chris Regal, happens to be a bona fide Trekkie, and that's where the name came from. So beyond that, it's just a catchy name, and Chris decided that's what we're calling the product. This is a software appliance based on SUSE Linux Enterprise 11 64-bit. Latest greatest operating system. This is the only proxy cache we are aware of that is based on native 64-bit code. So the scalability performance, it's sort of an unfair fight. We win. We provide the proxy services with various authentication services, content filtering by a company called Content Keeper. We're lined up and are expecting to release things. We don't have anything to report at this time and are very happy with what we have, so we're looking for that to be a competitive market soon. The policy enforcement and access controls are way on the rule set that you have available in a border manager, and we'll get to see some of that as we go as well. And round the feature set to really provide a full replacement for border manager, we are taking advantage of some of the technology that's already in SLES 11. We're not trying to reinvent those wheels. We are taking advantage of the mature, tested technologies and are wrapping the administration and configuration of those technologies into a web-based management tool. So you get the best of both worlds. If any of you have attempted to set up VPNs with a straight SLES environment, it's a little challenging. Definitely falls on the cryptic side. The administration and configuration being in the web GUI makes it a much friendlier environment, easier to use, and ties it all together as you would be expecting for a border manager replacement. Logging is one of, and reporting are two of the features that customers tell us they weren't all that happy with border manager. And a lot of time has been spent by SuperLumin making good on that, improving that, a very a unique approach to how the logs and the reporting are tied together, and that's another area we'll talk about a little more later. On the advanced features, client trust is a way of life for border manager customers. We have the SuperLumin Network single sign-on technology, which currently supports Windows clients authenticating in an eDirect environment. As we'll see with the what's coming in 2.2 release, that gets expanded on the client and the server side. We will be providing single sign-on support for Windows machines in an eDirect environment or in an NTLM/Active Directory/Samba/DSFW environment. We are also adding support for Macintosh. The optimized social media cache is that next dimension beyond what anyone had in mind or had an idea that they wanted in a border manager environment, and that is handling the rich media that the internet has evolved to deliver since border manager was released or designed. We are also instrumented to provide an infrastructure for large enterprises building their own content distribution networks. So distributing Silverlight video through an enterprise. We provide the pipes and the valves and the switches to make that happen. And the optional content filtering with Content Keeper. So beyond Border Manager, how far? The problems really haven't changed all that much since Border was released in the 90s. The scale has definitely changed. The environments have changed. We're still required as administrators to provide forward proxy services for our users, to protect our web resources inside the firewall with reverse proxy. Single sign-on is what makes it tolerable to users to be controlled as they access the web. Some of you may have attempted to use WCCP with Border Manager, and those of you that did not commit suicide after that attempt, it's safe. WCCP has tested, tried it, and true, and very much recommended if you would be looking to implement a transparent proxy for your environment instead of the explicit forward proxy. So there's some real conveniences there. We're using the base technologies in SLES to provide standard firewall and VPN technologies wrapped up into the software. And the whole concept of progressive HTTP-based caching and proxy, that means a lot. And I could fill a couple of slides with the various features, the technology specifics of how that works, but there are a number of formats audio that use progressive HTTP as their transport. And there are a number that don't. So those that basically provide support for HTTP, progressive HTTP, it's pretty automatic. The caching will work through the proxy. So in a lot of ways, Nemesis is what Border Manager should have been into had it been a strategic product for Novell. So it was a year and a half ago, something along those lines. SuperLumin was named the official replacement for Border Manager. The objective from Novell's perspective was to provide customers with a based proxy cache, since Border Manager has often been the last standing NetWare box in the environment. Not that there's anything wrong with that, said the guy who thankful to NetWare for helping him buy a house and put 3 kids through college. We are on the Novell price list. VLA and MLA customers have a special program that has just been extended through September 1st, through August to September 1st. I believe if you purchase 3 years of maintenance on Border Manager, the license for SuperLumin Nemesis is free. There has been some confusion over the SLES that having an entitlement to Border Manager does not provide you an entitlement to SuperLumin. There are SLA pricing schedules to add SuperLumin, and we have a cut-down version called iProxy that's also available on the way, and we're happy to address your questions on that. Well, we have the contact information that will come up at the end. So Novell has extended support for Border Manager through March of 2012. And the same guys that answer the phone at Novell for technical Border Manager have been trained on supporting SuperLumin. So transition that is already begun for those support engineers. Social media cache takes a heck of a lot of time in that it's to many systems administrators that run Border Manager. One of their primary objectives in life is preventing users from accessing Facebook and YouTube. We are starting to see that turn, and companies are recognizing the business value that's available to social media. If that's you, decide to pay attention to and not pass over, we have solved many of the problems associated with caching and proxy to YouTube in particular and Facebook. YouTube is delivered to a network of hundreds of servers on their content distribution network. The secret sauce in SuperLumin is to sort out objects and abstract them, put in a layer of abstraction between the objects and the servers that they are being served up through, so that we recognize the objects and know that we have them when the request comes in for the same object but referencing different content distribution endpoint. Also, Facebook doesn't provide as much bang for the buck in terms of bandwidth savings. We also allow optimizations or provide optimizations for accessing through Nemesis. So again, iProxy, as I just a moment ago, is that cut-down version of Nemesis that does not have the social media components. That is provided, I believe that's on the Novell price list only on the SLA. On social media cache, this is a variation of Nemesis that SuperLumin also sells directly and sells it as a full appliance. So you can imagine one of the best places to take advantage of a social media cache would be a university residence hall, where it's on YouTube all the time. Some early adopters did some studies measuring their bandwidth utilization, their top site lists, etc., and we're reporting, depending on the day of the week, anywhere from a 30 to 50% reduction in total bandwidth, period. Not just YouTube bandwidth, but their bandwidth utilization from those residence hall networks. At the same time, YouTube disappeared from the list of top usage sites. And at that also, while usage consumption of that service actually increased. This is an opportunity, and this is a cultural thing in a lot of organizations, whether or not this is appropriate for your institution or organization. If it's something that you're starting to be pressured on, this is an excuse for you to say yes and be the hero. So if they're trying to get to Facebook and YouTube now and they're complaining about the performance, complaining about buffering, this is an opportunity to enhance that experience for your users. So what's under the covers? SUSE Linux Enterprise 11 Server x86-64. This is the real deal. You get to pick the latest greatest hardware as long as it's certified to run SLES 11 64-bit. Scalability is through the roof. So in a 32-bit world, of course, you can go to 4 gig of RAM. I'm not sure what the limitation is on number of CPU cores 32-bit these days, but we can go to 4096 if you happen to have a box around that provides that kind of capacity. 64 disks, I believe, is an arbitrary limit. We can probably do more if you, again, have a box laying around and need to scale a system to support caching, say, for an ISP servicing half a state. The maximum object size that we can cache is 32 gig. So that is larger than a Blu-ray ISO, and that's another arbitrary limit that's been set to the software. I'm told by marketing that should someone need to cache something larger than 32-bit, 30 gig, give us a call. We will flip some bits and make it as big as it needs to be. So in the overall cache performance, over those 64 or more disks, we are able to handle a maximum of 100 million objects in cache. The software appliance, we saw the initial step before we jump into the slides. We boot from the ISO in the case of my VM environment. Be careful. As soon as you hit that install button, it will immediately destroy your partition tables, recreate to suit Nemesis, and start the installation. Management is through the web console, and there is also a command line interface called / that the administrators have available. The administration console is sort of a GUI layer that uses the CL background. When you run Border Manager, you often have to deal with where do my eDirectory replicas go? And do I need to complicate my replica maps by accommodating Border Manager? We are using LDAP on the back end and not participating directly in eDirectory. So we're consuming your eDirectory. You need to have a replica on the server, and that have to complicate your eDirectory management environment. The big news flash, and this is something I started pushing for on board with SuperLumin is, why don't we support VMware? And the developers all collectively turned very pale. They are the performance freaks and did not want to have anything between them and the hardware. It turns out that in a border management, administrators and users are more concerned with the security aspects and are not trying to support thousands or tens of thousands of users through a cache. After testing and experience with users that went ahead and used VMware anyway, we recently announced support for VMware ESXi. Keep in mind that's not the best choice, depending upon how your ESX is set up and what the requirements are in terms of users with requirements, things like that. We're happy to work with you to set expectations appropriately if that's something that is of interest. The policy engine would really be better compared to IDM policies, Identity Manager, than border rules. You are able to chain multiple policies together. You are able to build very complex logic for the conditions based on users, groups, containers, the UI, various components of the URI, IP addresses, source and destination, ports, time ranges, etc. We also have regular express support for those of you who like to think in terms of regex. I just yesterday had an installation I was doing for an evaluation for a customer in Switzerland that had a whole bunch of domain names that needed to be covered with lots of different top-level domains. And regex was a way of reducing 8 or 10 rules to a single condition. On the actions, simple stuff. We allow it. We can send you to a custom error page. We can require authentication. We can hook the filter. We can do specific logging. And we can log particular results. The difference with Border Manager is that when you made changes to the rules, you often have to restart the cache. And depending upon how serious you got your Border Manager box, that meant you could be waiting for a while. This is restart on the fly, and there is no downtime when you apply changes to your Nemesis server. Logging in reporting, and we'll have a little update when we get to the 2.2 update page. We'll support common and extended logs. We use syslog underneath the covers for the systems. So if there are any tools that you've created for reporting, we can take advantage of those, and you can take advantage of those on SuperLumin. On the reporting side, the thing that isn't mentioned here is that to improve the type of reporting that we can do, we've implemented MySQL on the server. MySQL is set to consume the flat files that are the logs. At present, the results of those are displayed in the browser. And as a preview to our 2.2 update, those will now be exportable. And you always have the ability to use various third-party reporting tools. If you had very stringent reporting requirements for your Border Manager world, you probably already own Siphon or WebSpy or one of those. That investment is not thrown away at all. So very much applies. As previously indicated, we are now supporting VMware. The formal support is for ESXi version 4. A lot of customers, in fact, most of the evaluations we've done over the last few months were done on VMware. And that's what started to get our attention and build our experience base and confidence in running SuperLumin Nemesis in a VM environment. So what's in 2.2? There's more than this. I wanted to hit this slide up and get it as much of it as possible on here for you. The single sign-on with 2.1 applies to Windows workstations in an eDirectory environment. In 2.2, we are adding support for NTLM, meaning Active Directory, and supporting Windows and or Macintosh clients for either of those environments. We're also adding additional form-based authentication if you aren't able to take advantage of the single sign-on. You can use an NTLM backend, an LDAP, generic LDAP backend, or a Radius authentication source. Centralized management is being integrated with another Strata cache product called Activia, which will provide a single point of administration for any number of SuperLumin Nemesis servers. At the same time, we're adding a role-based administration, which allows you to have more than the one administrative user that gets defined when you install the server. So you're able to grant granular privileges to others in the environment to spread responsibility around and the ability to manage various components of the SuperLumin server. A new feature is being able to push logs by FTP to central log servers. The integrated VPN administration is being added to our management console with the 2.2 release. Also, NIC bonding and teaming for very high bandwidth requirements. We're able to bond multiple gigabit adapters. Or if things are totally out of control, and maybe Brad will get pale if I say this, multiple 10 gig adapters if that's what it takes. There's a lot of work that has been done in allowing you to customize the log formatting to determine which fields, which bits of data do I want to include in what sequence to accommodate any custom reporting that you already have in place. You can set the logs to comply to what those tools are expecting. We have some very cool real-time graphing that you can see over the last, anything from the last 15-minute window to the last 12 months, what the bandwidth has looked like, the utilization, bandwidth saved, requests, etc. We're adding response times and cache hit rate graphing to the 2.2 release and providing a way to export those MySQL generated reports. So this is how to contact us. My name is Wilson. I am swilson@superlumin.com. And last minute futzing with the slideshow turned my URL into a font color that is probably unreadable. You can guess it's www.superlumin.com. If you visit the site, on the top bar you'll see a button for resources that will link to our Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center has a series of how-to guides that have been built and some videos that demonstrate basic configuration and some of the other capabilities of the servers. That is also where you would go to download software media and request evaluation licenses. So with that, let's come back to, what do you know, it worked. There was a reboot of the server in the middle of the installation, and it's come back and asked me for initial login. I'll log in. The default password is password. Very close. It does require you to change that password immediately. Oh, my screen. You'll see it's very allowing me to put a weak password in there because I have to remember way too many of them. Once the installation is complete from software, the system is mounted, and the basic setup is accomplished through a shell script called Quick Start. I'm going to call this Nemesis, and I'll leave it in SuperLumin.com. And this is what you need numlock turned off. Gateway default to .1, yes. It is .2. It goes up through DHCP. And I'll skip secondary. I'll do the localization. Time zone is Eastern. I'm going to leave the administrator username as admin. Give it a password. And we're done. I'm going to skip direct to working system, and this is the opening screen. I know we've got about 7 minutes, so it's probably time to bring up the, how do I bring up the window again? I can see this
on your right thing, there should be some icons in there to be able to pull up a chat and the Q&A. There's just yeah, little icons there.
And I just see one question from, or one comment still from audio quality.
Okay, they might not have come through correctly. I can just read a few of these and we can go that way. That would probably work. Let's see. The first one I see is, what about XEN support?
I'm sorry?
There was a question about what about Zen support, XEN support?
We have not had any experience with that, so it's not something that we can formally support. We certainly would encourage users in an evaluation demo lab to give it a try and let us know if there are issues, if there are things. We are interested in supporting enterprise-grade version.
Okay, then the next one says, can the product use the link wall category filtering suite?
Linkwall does have a version of their software for SuperLumin. They are one of the vendors that indicated they were working on and planning in 2011. I'm not the guy who can make commitments on their behalf.
Okay. And then if you have a large network of users, let's say 2,500 users at one site, will this cause a bottleneck? Would you need to implement a proxy hierarchy?
There are a lot of ways to address large-scale environments. First thing is we're not able to affect the laws of physics. So bandwidth management, server, and the network paths will be very important. We do have a number of large-scale environments using load balancers to help alleviate those issues. I saw also a question about the clustering, and this ties in there as well. We're not supporting the native Linux clustering in that there seem to be better ways at this point to get failover capability using an CCP to a layer switch or even a DNS round robin if you're a little and able to wait for it to fail over to the second server. So having multiple boxes dedicated to the cache would be a part of any fault-tolerant solution, including, and having those boxes up all the time with a load balancer would provide that same level of fault for the environment.
Okay. Then the next one is there a way to block access or bypass caching based on an application used instead of based on user or workstation?
Thank you for pointing out the 1.2.2 feature I skipped. With 2.1, we don't have a way to call out action of cache bypass. That has been added with the 2.2, that you'll be able to use the complex logic in the policies to which is this is an object site that we don't want. How are the rules filters protected for disaster recovery? Hi, Stuart. How you doing? And with that, let me go to the Getting Started screen to show you exactly. We have an import config option. Here, you are able to do an export of either the entire configuration, which would be a clone. It is expected to be the same on the receiving end of this, importing this configuration, including the hard disk, the networks, etc. You have more granular levels of X available. This shareable configuration, everything but network disk firewall, would be applicable if you are trying to migrate from one box to another. For the fault tolerance cover, I'd keep a copy of most all of them in a safe place, be able to bring them back up. The centralized management option that we have with Activia will also give us a way of maintaining the configuration separately from the server so they can be applied to multiple servers through the console. We support IPv6. We're taking advantage of the support in 11. Lumen for SLES 10.3, nope, sorry, we're using, and what is used for VPN client? Is it Win 764? We're using the OpenSwan SSH VPN, or SSL VPN, I'm sorry, which will allow you to, and I think they're still trying to figure out which client we're going to package for easy distribution. Being standards-based, you will be able to pick and choose among a whole bunch of VPN clients that are available. And that appears to be the end of the list.
And there was a couple other ones on the chat. It says, does it support WebSense/surf control filtering?
WebSense is another company that indicated earlier that they were going to provide a filter for SuperLumin, and have not to this point made that product available. Now keep in mind, a lot of the content filtering companies, they have off solutions, which become another hop between you and the internet. Using off-box solutions, we take advantage of filtering from any vendor. The downside for the off-box solution is that you aren't able to integrate the policies of people in this group or this container apply this filter configuration, which is available for the on-box solutions.
And it looks like there's just a couple more. One asked, could you show some of the logs available?
look at logs. How much time do we have here, Q? We are right up against it.
Yeah, we have a few minutes. We generally will have a break in between, so we can take a few more minutes.
I was really proud of myself getting done in the time allowed.
You did great.
So for the logging, let me first draw you to the graphs. And this is my own personal lab, so there's not a heck of a lot of action going on. I can see over the last 15 minutes the very low-level traffic, last hour all the way to the last year. This was set up in November. You can see that traffic level. The request rates give us another graph. The light color on top is traffic served up to the browser. The dark below is the traffic requested from the source. And you can see little green splotches, which are those requests that did not have to be made. And on connections, that's usually easier to see. We're maintaining the connections on a server-to-server basis, just like you would with a browser. So we're not setting up and tearing down connections to the destinations as a typical browser would. On the logs, we start with the system alerts. This is the first places to come for troubleshooting. We have other debugging messages here in the messages log. Then we have the policy log. Anything that is being triggered by a policy, whether it's authentication or allowing or blocking of content, will be in this log. This is a web interface to a straight text log that is available on the server itself, being that this is SLES 11. You can use any of a number of tools, FTP to SCP, FileZilla, whatever you've got to automate pulling these or getting on the box directly and commenting. HTTP provides a list of all the objects that have been accessed, and this is with all enabled on the system. You don't have to have this level of detail in the logs if you don't care to. And look at the actual reporting. And this is chewing on the log files. And let's make it a limited time here in the interest of time. I'm going to skip stuff that's not in the time frame specified. It has done digesting them. Now it's going to pull out just the actual time frame. And this is the server they've given me to use on my lab. Any real server would perform better. Here we are in the demo zone.
While we're waiting on that, we just had one kind of follow-up question. That last screen that you showed with all the logs, can that be exported to Excel, for example?
Those are flat files that exist on the server. You could copy them to your workstation and import them into Excel. There isn't a direct export to Excel function, but that is something to put on the enhancement request. Thank you for that. Here we go. When I am specifying a report, I've got the date range that's already been done. I have the option to pick which user I want to report on or include everybody. I'm interested in this Diane character. I want to see columns. Doesn't matter how I'm grouping since I'm only doing one user, and I'm going to sequence it by time. Boom, there it is. As you can see, Diane spends a lot of time on Facebook, which is allowed in this lab. That's obscuring a bit. So I can see the SQL query that was used to generate this particular report. And page through the report. This is the type of report that would be exportable to a file with the 2.2. Anything else?
Yeah, I think we're about out of time. I did have one thing last. They just asked if you could repeat the offer that is available for the MLA Border Manager customers.
And this is through Novell, so you want to get a hold of your Novell reseller or your Novell account executive. If you are a customer, MLA or VLA customer, currently with Border Manager under maintenance, you can purchase 3 years of maintenance in advance and receive the SuperLumin license for your user account at no charge.
Cool. Great. All right, and that look. Oh, go ahead.
And just to follow up, I would strongly encourage anyone to visit the Knowledge Center if you are looking for more information. You can go directly to www.superlumin.com/knowledge_center, or it's available from the SuperLumin homepage under the Resources tab. We do that you register. Those registrations come through my queue, and I will get those turned around and approved as quickly as possible.
Perfect.
So I want to thank everyone for your attention, and hopefully this has been useful information.